Today I'd like to draw our attention to our second reading from the book of Revelation, Revelation 21. To understand or appreciate what is being said here in Revelation 21, it's important that we appreciate what's going on in the book of Revelation in general. The book of Revelation, or in Greek translated as the Apocalypse, has become associated with the end of the world, sort of doomsday. In fact, we have a whole genre of movies and books now that are post-apocalyptic, that refer to life after some sort of disastrous, catastrophic, cataclysmic event. Typically nowadays is some sort of nuclear war or some infectious disease that turns the world to zombies. But the book of Revelation, and further, the book of Revelation is often taken as now the map to predict the end of the world. And that's how it's popularly read by many people, at least on the internet today. But the book of Revelation is not primarily preoccupied with what is going to happen in the end. The name Apocalypse or Revelation means precisely that, a revealing, a peeling back of a layer of reality to see the deeper truths, the deeper spiritual realities at work behind these things. And as John is writing this, he's primarily preoccupied to what the Lord is doing now, in the present moment. John is receiving these visions in the book of Revelation to be given to a Christian people who are being actively persecuted. People who are actively suffering. People who are living in fear, who are seeing their loved ones be killed for the faith. Ones for whom these images that we see in the book of Revelation of blood and death is in a way their reality. And unfortunately, there are places in the world today for them for whom war, for destruction, for death of their loved ones is an actively lived experience in reality. So it's people who are immensely suffering, who are surrounded by destruction, chaos, and death. That is whom John is speaking, to whom he's given these visions, these inspirations from the Lord to say to them. And so there's a few key passages that help us understand what he's doing. First of all, it opens with this vision of Christ, the Son of God, in his resurrected glory. And he says, I hold the keys to death and the netherworld. And that matters. Because it's precisely these people who are surrounded by death, which it seems death is the victor, that death is destroying the world around them, that death seems to be running rampant. But Jesus says, stay with me. I hold the keys to death in the netherworld, that I can unlock death. Death doesn't have the final word, but the word of life does. And this understanding is deepened in the middle of the book of Revelation. There's this vision he has of this great scroll that is sealed up by 7 seals. And again, like many of the symbols in Revelation, it's layered with meaning. It's the Old Testament scriptures, what God has been doing in history. But we might even understand it as the very story of the world history itself. And it can only be unsealed, it can only be understood and interpreted, opened up by one. The Lion of Judah. It says only the Lion of Judah can open. And how does the Lion of Judah appear? As a lamb that was slain. In other words, it's precisely that we believe in a God who doesn't just sit up there as we're doing our suffering, but what helps us understand our very suffering is this God who enters into our suffering, our struggles, our death. Christ crucified is precisely the interpretive lens of everything. This is the revelation. This is the understanding of everything. That this suffering and death only makes sense because of this gospel truth. That God can take our terrible suffering, and his goodness is so great that he can weave it into an even greater good. And that, brothers and sisters, is our beautiful and wild hope as Christians. And that hope is then articulated in the reading we have today. As you move through the book of Revelation, it is this great drama. There is darkness and chaos and death, but then it comes to the end where good triumphs, where darkness is swallowed up in light, where death is destroyed and swallowed up in life. And says, where every tear is wiped away. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The former heaven and former earth had passed away. I saw a new city of Jerusalem coming down of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, God's dwelling is with the human race. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will always be with them. And every tear, he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, or mourning, or wailing, or pain, for the old order has passed away." The one who sat on the throne said, "Behold, I make all things new." That all will be made new. And it's this faith that gives us this hope. Whatever we face in this life, that all will be set right, and all will be well. That God can weave all things. When given in Christ, when we stay with Christ, even the worst of things give way to an even greater good than we can imagine. To concretize this a little bit more, I experienced this, or felt like I was witnessing this in a real-time way in the life of a priest who I've shared his story before, I think, of Father Larry Choate. This priest who I knew, who I helped when I was a seminarian in Chicago, or studying in Chicago, and I was helping with this parish in Chicago. This Father Larry was kind of this gruff old priest who had had a very rough life and had struggled with alcoholism, and I think never believed that he was a good person, even in all his years of priesthood. But I was able to know him and witness his moving through the final days of his life. Because while I was with him, he got very ill with an extreme and aggressive cancer. And he was blown away by, thinking he never did anything right, and yet seeing all these people coming and visit him and loving him. He said, "You don't think you do a darn thing right, and yet all these people just love you. You have no idea why." But he was experiencing this grace of God at work in his life in a very real-time way in the midst of his suffering. And I remember in my final visit with him, when we knew he only had days left, I said, "How are you, Father Larry?" And he said, "Everything, good and bad, it's all been set right." He had been estranged from some family members in his life and had reconciled. And he had this experience that in all the ups and downs and all the suffering of his life and all his own poor choices he had made, experiencing this overwhelming goodness of God that was moving all things, that all would be well, that all will be set right. Already, even before his final death, he saw that all was well. I felt like that witnessing the end of his life, being blessed to accompany him, was seeing this very thing. For God says, "Behold, I make all things new. I will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there shall be no more death or mourning or wailing or pain, for the old order has passed away. All will be well." The one who sat on the throne said, "Behold, I make all things new." Today I'd like to draw our attention to our second reading from the book of Revelation, Revelation 21. To understand or appreciate what is being said here in Revelation